First of all, I just like to say welcome to everybody to Prime Time for Women's 10-week series, Navigating Change. We decided to host the series because we realized that none of us escape life without going through a lot of changes. Some of them are exciting changes, like the birth of a child, or anticipating a trip, or finding a new love. And some of the trials that we have, or the changes that we face, are incredibly unexpected and very painful. And so we decided to do this series, Navigating Change, to highlight women who can talk with us about their journey of navigating change. Today, we are going to be talking with my sister Barbie, who is, I am so pleased and grateful that she's joining us for a program called Family Addiction, a mother's story of heartbreak and resilience. Barbie's going to share her personal story as a mother who has lost a son to addiction, but also as a woman who really has determined that resiliency is possible, especially if you have help and support from others. Barbie has an MA and is a licensed professional counselor. She's worked with at-risk youth, chronically mentally ill. She's been in an office setting, private office practice, acute care setting, and worked as a counselor in a large church. What she's going to share with us today stems from her personal experience of navigating one of life's most difficult situations, the death of a child, and from also her experience working with her clients. Barbie's going to be passing on her hard-earned knowledge and remind all of us that we are not alone and that resiliency is possible. And Barbie, I'd just like to really thank you for being here.
Thanks.
To our attendees, I wanted to say that we hope that this is an opportunity to connect and to share. Prime Time for Women knows and always emphasizes that we are stronger, healthier, and happier together, that isolation is never the answer. So because we're a small group today, I invite you to take yourself off mute and share your video, your audio, your visual feed if you're interested, your camera, and feel like you can be a part of this conversation as well. Right, Barbie?
Absolutely.
Right. So before we jump in, I just wanted to say that because I've never had one of my 6 sisters on my program before, this is a super special treat. And Barbie, I was going to ask you what you think Mom would say if she knew, first of all, you were doing Prime Time for Women, and secondly, what she would say about knowing that you're going to be talking about Jeff.
Thinking about Mom, she would want to be here.
Yeah.
Mom would want to be on Prime Time for Women.
Right.
Be very pleased. And I think that Mom was somebody who walked the road of being as a part of an addictive family. I mean, our dad was in recovery. So I think she would be very proud, but also very sad.
Yeah. I think that she would be proud of you for talking about it, because she was one of those people who said, you can't hide it. You got to cope with it and deal with it, put it out there and find that support. And I think you're right, because her mom was an alcoholic and she was married to an alcoholic. She's seen some of her grandchildren and children deal with it. So I think she would be so very proud of you. So that's part of why I really wanted to ask that question. Yeah.
I think she would be very pleased, but she would want to be front and center.
Well, I'm not going to deny that. And then I was going to ask everybody who's participating today to share 3 words that describe you right now. And I do that because it gives us all a sense of where we're from, where we're coping, what we're struggling with. And I'll go first. So to me today, I feel grateful that you're here, Barbie, and that Kate and Nicole are with us. I feel emotional. I can hear it in my voice. And I think I also feel a little sense of anxiety because this is such something that's close to not only you, but to all the Howards, and to, I think, women across the world. So it's a shared humanity kind of thing.
In terms of like three words that would describe me, I thought, a work in progress. Right? It's like I'm always working on being grateful. I'm always working on being intentional. And it's work to do those things.
Right.
To be in the present, to be mindful, and not to kind of get hijacked by the things that are going on around me. And sometimes I do better than others. But in terms of right now, I mean, I share the feeling of gratitude. I also share the feeling of anxiety, and it's just hard. It's hard to be vulnerable, and it's hard to always because you can't talk about it without getting emotional.
Right.
And so that's hard.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Barbie. Kate, did you want to share?
Yes, I think at the moment it's all very new to me, so I feel quite raw about how I feel, quite emotional, and very, very emotional, and sort of anxiety as well, I think, for what's to become the future.
All right, thanks, Kate. Nicole, did you want to share? Okay, well, feel free to jump in at any time. I would say also one of the things to everybody here, I hope that we would also feel courageous, because it is hard, and stepping forward in the midst of that pain or the hard work is courageous. So I'm giving us all a big fat shout out for that, and so glad that we're together. Okay, so Barbie, I was going to start off today's, for this part of the interview with, you know, you're going to share your journey of navigating Jeff's death, but I was wondering if you would first please tell us a little bit about him as a person, as a baby, as a boy, as a man, what was he like?
I'd love to.
And if you want me, you let me know if you want me to pull up those pictures.
Yeah, you can go ahead and share like the first couple.
Okay. I'm going to let you talk for a little bit first, because then we'll lose your pick. We'll lose you.
Okay. So Jeff was an open kid. He really had everything. He was handsome. He was charismatic. He was intelligent. I don't know if he, as a little guy, like he never really had to work for much. And so in some ways I say that because it came so easily to him, that when life got hard, he didn't have the resiliency, and he didn't have the he didn't know how to fight. He was disciplined from very, very early. He trained himself. He put me on a schedule when he, as an infant, like when he wanted to be fed. He was a really, really fun kid.
Well, let me pull up some of these pictures now, Barbie.
Okay.
Let's see. I gotta get to my share screen. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
Can you see those?
Yeah.
So I sent that picture to Jeff when about a month before he died. And he texted me back. I sent him that picture about a month before he died. He texted me back. He said, "Is that me?" I said, "Yeah, buddy, that's you." So, I mean, like, he didn't even recognize himself.
Mhm.
He was always pristine and neat. He always had to have his hair combed and had it slicked over, and he loved hairspray.
And it's interesting to see him as a little boy here because he became part of the military.
Mm-hmm. He did, yeah. He was a sweet little guy. He was a great big brother. He was the first of our 3 children.
And Barbie, is this a school project he's working on here?
I think that must be Christmas morning, and he's holding up some gift. I don't even know what it is.
Okay.
And that's Jeff that's Jeff and Zach when they were teenagers. He was probably about 16 there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is after he got out of the Army and when he was working in New York. And I went up there to visit him. He was sliding into a deep, deep pit in this picture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you knew he was struggling even though he looks perfect on the outside.
Completely.
Mm-hmm. Some people don't know. They're not aware of the struggles.
Yes. This is Jeff with my dad after his stroke in 2012. And this is Jeff in between, or right after he got out of one of his treatment facilities. So the last couple of years of Jeff's life, we spent a lot of time and resources in getting him into various treatments, into halfway houses and things like that to try and protect him from the inevitable.
Oh, yeah. And this was a Christmas photo.
It looks like it must have been, yeah.
At Kathy's house. I recognize her china.
Yeah.
All right, Barbie. Well, thank you for sharing those photos with us. So I've heard that you say that, well, let me ask you this. How long has it been since Jeff's death?
Almost 4 years. He died June 6, 2017.
And do you still miss him?
Yeah, every day.
Right. And I've heard you say before that you will always miss him, but that it's okay. So first of all, tell us why you say it's okay to miss somebody and what it is in particular you miss about Jeff.
So grief is one of those things that you never get over. It's one of those things that I would even say particularly out of order grief. If a person dies too young, too soon, not in the right timing, that it's something that you never ever get over, that you never not wish it were different.
Mm-hmm.
But it is one of those things that you have to learn to carry with you and to figure out a way to give some kind of a meaning or purpose to that particular loss and to that person's life and to their role that they played in your life.
How that purpose and that finding a way to move forward, how does that connect with the need? How important is it to talk about him in order to be able to move forward? Is it easier just to kind of pretend it didn't happen, or how important is it to be able to talk about your grief?
I mean, to be honest, it is incredibly important, but it's also very hard.
Right.
Those of us who've lost people, we overwhelm other people with our loss.
Mm.
Like we want to talk about it, and other people are good for a period of time, but then they are anxious to have us be better so they can be better. Or like they, it's one of those things that it's really hard. It's really important to find people that are safe, that can tolerate your level of pain and not have to
Say, hurry up and feel better.
right. Yeah. And so but it is important to be able to talk about, Jeff. It's important to be able to listen to other people's pain and to be able to say, I don't know exactly your pain, but I know pain. And then I said, I've lost a son too. And they're like, oh, and it helps them to know, it helps other people in some weird way to know that they're
We're
not.
not alone.
Yeah.
Right. So when we were doing research on topics for Prime Time for Women, it's interesting. The reason we're doing this is there was a lot of women interested in discussing family addiction, loss of a child to addiction, partly because they felt like they needed to talk about it, but there was nobody for them to talk to. And as a community that says we are here for other women and we understand the importance of support, we said, we need to do this. We need to have somebody. And I think as hard as it is for you, I think that you're modeling for all of us the strength that it takes, and also how they don't yet know how you have moved forward in your life, but you model resiliency as well, which is the hope for all of us, right? Because you just said we're never going to get over it, but we can be resilient, right?
Yeah, and I like to tease apart the difference between being adaptive and being resilient.
Okay.
Because a lot of people are adapted, and but adaptive doesn't necessarily mean resilience. Resilience carries the connotation that because something happened, I am changed fundamentally for the better as a result of it. And whether that I know that it has increased my compassion, it has humbled me in ways that I didn't realize that I needed to be humbled. Like I didn't know. And so when, in doing what I do for a profession, when I sit with people as a result, I'm sorry, did you?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, were you a professional counselor when Jeffrey died?
Yes.
Oh, you had already started. Okay.
Yeah, I had been practicing probably for about 5 or 6 years. Okay. So when Jeff was in Afghanistan in 2010, there was a significant event that happened. His addiction wasn't because of that event, but that event exacerbated it. So I was working then, and so I was aware of the phenomenon unfolding in front of me, and I was completely powerless to do anything about it. Mm-hmm. Although I got him into treatment, I pursued providers. I called his psychiatrist at one point, and I told him that he was a danger, and the psychiatrist wouldn't take my phone call. And I said, well, I left him a rambling voice message. I said, I'm not asking for you to break HIPAA laws. I said, I'm just providing you with information. I know you cannot tell me anything, but I can tell you anything, but I can tell you everything. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I was fighting for his life.
So go back to that adaptive and resilient. Yeah. So go ahead. So
when we have the loss of a loved one, the ability to be able to take that loss and to learn from it and to actually grow from it and to be fundamentally changed for the better as a result of it is ongoing. And we each get to define that for ourselves, what that means for us in that particular situation. But to grow and to actually like yourself more afterwards is, I think, like a good way of knowing whether we're being resilient or being adaptive.
Okay. I just want to check in with Kate and Nicole. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, or you can put questions in the chat or comments. I did want to say that Nicole shared that she is feeling grateful, joyful, and fearful. So thank you for sharing with us, Nicole.
Thank you.
Barbie, how prevalent is addiction for in the U.S.? I know you had shared with me some statistics.
Well, I don't actually have them in front of me. I'm sorry.
Well, I do. You said that according to this, and maybe, and this because we have some people from out of the country, in the U.S., according to the CDC, 11.2% of people, let me see if I can pull up, over 12 years age have used illicit drugs in the past month. 11.2% of all US citizens over 12 years old.
I find that statistic shockingly low.
Low?
Very much so.
Wow.
Addiction, I do not know a person in both my regular life and in my professional life that are not impacted by it in some way, shape, or form. Whether they have a loved one, they have a friend, it is a disease that knows no boundaries. It knows no cultural boundaries. It knows no socioeconomic boundaries. It knows no race or ethnicity boundaries, no faith boundaries. It impacts all of us are touched by it in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to know that, because one of the things I know that I really struggled with is feeling judged or feeling less than about myself because I had friends, because I didn't know that friends had problems going on in their lives and things like that. And that was very much of an isolating thing. I felt very lonely. I felt like I was the only one, and that somehow or another I had done something terribly wrong to have made this happen. There was a lot of just.
Barbie, was that shaming coming from the outside, or was that shame from the inside?
You know what, to be honest, I think it was a little bit both, but I think it was mostly coming from the inside. But in my experience, people have said some just staggering things. Something along the lines of like, well, well, I haven't ever, I don't know, just like, well, I'm trying to even think of some of the things.
Thank God it wasn't my kid, or I did this for my kid.
Well, or like, well, my kids haven't gotten involved with that. You know, I'm thankful that my kids don't use substances or whatever. I'd be like, okay. And what do you want me to do with that? But yeah, I can't even right now come up with the top of my head, just some things that people would say as a means of trying to make themselves feel better. That's how I now interpret it. But in the moment, it just felt like it was a dagger through my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Barbie, as a mom who has lost a son to addiction, but also as a counselor, what are some things that we can say when somebody shares with us their struggle? Because we are right now advocating for people to speak up and to find support. And maybe you think you can't tell somebody else because they won't understand, but from what you're saying, it's more likely that they would understand. I think sometimes, well, I'm gonna let you answer that. What is it that you recommend? What is a helpful response to hear if you're the one struggling, and what is a helpful thing to say to them?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've learned this in my training, but I've also learned this experientially, like through my experiences. The absolute best thing that people can absolutely do is to listen and to not have the need to reduce my distress by giving platitudes or by saying, oh, well, it must all work out for the best, or he's not in pain anymore. Things like that, like, okay. But that really is not helpful for the person who's suffering, for the person who's lost their person. It really is just to listen and to say, gosh, that's just really hard.
I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
There's an excellent book that I recommend to my couples. It's called I Hear You. I can't remember the author. I'll have to find that out. But it's a great book on communication, and it's just about the skill of being able to listen. So it's a really, and it's written by a man, so I like that because it's practical and condensed and short and concise. So, but I'll see if I can find that resource and get it to you later.
Okay, that'd be great. Let's see, let me pull up some of my other questions here. You said in one of the emails you sent me when we were talking about this, that the grief and pain of addiction are overwhelming and devastating. It's normal to want to quit, to self-protect. What does self-protect mean? What are you quitting?
Like you want to quit relationship with your person who's the addict, right? Then that's it. I am done. I'm not going to help you anymore.
You're on your own.
Yeah, you're on your own. You have to figure this out. You know, how much more money can Dad and I spend on another rehab for you? And of course, another horrible thing about being the mom, the mother of an addict, I imagine that this is even true for siblings or for other relationships, but it's the parental role that I understand. But in Jeff's pain, he needed to yell at me. He needed it to be my fault. He needed to tell me every single thing I had ever done wrong as a mom. He needed to justify in his mind as to why things were what they were, and to make it okay that he was self-destructing. And so he said horrific things over and over and over and replayed events of his childhood that happened, but not in the way that he built them in his mind to have happened. And like I wanted to quit being beat up. I wanted to quit being assaulted. And I wanted him to become what I knew that he was capable of becoming. Mm-hmm. So like I wanted to stop being hurt. Mm-hmm. And so like that self-protect and like wanting to quit and wanting to not have to have that conversation for the umpteenth thousandth time. And there were times, and this is kind of like where like boundaries come into play, mm-hmm. where how we have to learn to make decisions out of our values and out of what we know to be true, and not out of our feelings when I wanted, and because I'm hurt, I want to hurt back. I want to say things back. That's incredibly hard.
You know, that would be hard for me.
It's hard for anybody.
But as my sister, you know, that would be really hard for me. Barbie, what were some of the coping strategies that you employed that, well, I'm sure you used both coping strategies that were successful and others that were not successful. So maybe talk about those. And I heard you say boundaries, and I guess setting boundaries according to your values is probably got to be right up there, right?
Yeah, and truthfully, one of the, like, it's incredibly hard to do this, particularly when you're being attacked all the time.
Yeah.
And that is a very much a part of what happens to those of us who are caught in this cycle with our addict.
Especially adult children, right?
I think.
More so than like with a parent. You know, with our dad's drinking, I didn't feel the same responsibility to fix him. I wanted it to stop, but I didn't see it as my job. But
yeah, and I don't think that dad attacked in his drinking. I mean, he was more, you know, he wasn't, but yeah, like he wasn't necessarily blaming us. But
yeah, I guess I was just thinking fix the addict, not just dodge the attack. Yeah.
Yeah, but for Jeff, I mean, Jeff, yeah, and so and I just know this to be true of other people who have their adult children who are abusing substances, is they very much have a need to blame other people for what's going on in their lives. And it's very, very hard to be able to tolerate the assaults. So like learning how to ground yourselves and learning to that what is going on is not about you, and to learn to not personalize that is one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. And the other thing I had to learn to do was I had to learn how to not defend. Like those events that Jeff replayed from his childhood did not happen like he remembers them happening. And most of them, like it was, and so, but all I could do was just to hear him, listen to him and say, buddy, you know, if I could, I'd do that differently. I can't change it. It, you know, like it happened. And I would want to add, not in the way that you say, but I didn't add it. And so the idea about learning that what is going on is about him and it's really not about me was very, very difficult, but it, and this is about like not personalizing it. The other thing is about like learning boundaries, because I wanted to rescue him. I wanted him to not be in pain. I wanted him to get it.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted him. And so every time I thought that Jeff had hit his bottom, I've like rushed in with a plan. Okay, we're going to get you into this rehab. I want to get you with this provider. I would rush in to help. And he would take my help because he knew he wasn't okay. And he welcomed the immediate reprieve, but he wasn't serious about change.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and he was always looking for a quick way to make the change rather than to do the hard work.
Or maybe to have the change come from outside him as opposed from inside.
Yeah.
And as we talk about navigating change, I have to say, I think you're our 6th or 7th speaker in this series. And I have heard from every single expert that has spoken with us that real change comes from the inside. Change happens to us, but personal change comes from the inside.
Sustained change.
Sustained change. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And this kind of goes to like motives. Like, why would I be willing to tolerate him speaking to me that way?
Mhm.
This is about like the narrative and the thing that I tell myself in my head. It's like, well, because I know he's in pain, because I know that his mind is sick. I know that his brain is sick. And because his brain is sick, his mind is distorted.
Yeah.
And it's about being constructive and helpful and not about but and there were days I did not get it right. There were many days I didn't get it right. But one of the things that I kept telling myself was that I knew for a full 6 months before Jeff finally died that he was going to die. He could not keep going how he was going. It was inevitable unless there was some drastic thing that happened.
Mhm.
And so I kept,
It felt like watching a train wreck in slow motion.
yeah, it really was. And every time, I kept saying to myself, okay, if the worst thing happens tomorrow, how do I want to live today?
Mhm.
What's important? What is the next right thing to do? Don't act out of your feelings. Make those intentional decisions today, because you might not get tomorrow. And this is going to sound kind of cold, but hopefully you'll understand it. I would send him text messages encouraging and things like that. And I wanted there to be evidence that I did try.
Right.
There was that I didn't, forsake him, that I didn't forget him. I needed there to be
Proof.
yeah, proof. Yeah, that I was I was very intentional about reaching out and about not just quitting, even though I wanted to quit.
Yeah, but Barbie, I would say that I don't think that sounds cold at all. In fact, it sounds loving towards Jeff. You're sending him the encouragement, but also giving yourself what you needed to have, that you were there for him. And to me, in some ways, that's just super smart, because we all need validation and evidence of our goodness, and that we try. We're all not going to be successful all the time. That's just not possible. We're humans. But I think that's one of the hard things about having a child who's struggling with addiction, is that's, to some people in the world, that's proof that you didn't do a good job. And so to have other proof to combat that false narrative is important. I actually, as you were talking about that, I was thinking that would be a good coping strategy to share and to implement and to have other people use.
And it's the idea about as living our lives intentionally, and being intentional and not living things according to our feelings and our emotions. It's one of the hardest things we will ever do, but it's also one of the best things we'll ever do.
So this was not one of the questions that I have on my paper, but I've been taking some little notes since you've been talking. And you have talked about constant awareness and being present, being intentional, repetition of those intentional techniques, the repetition of awareness. In some ways, Barbie, as I'm listening to you talk, I wonder if there is a meditative aspect in being so present, being so intentional, so focused. You hear people talk about the benefits of
Mindfulness.
That's what I was trying to think of the word.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you were living in this incredibly focused, mindful period as you were reaching out to support Jeff.
Like I told you earlier, I'm a work in progress. Right? And I absolutely believe in the benefits of that. And that's something that I'm constantly like work towards, but it's counterintuitive. Our brains and the way that we think and the way that we want to act is we want to make shortcuts. We want to make quick assessments, and we want to make decisions, and we want to move forward.
And we want to get out of pain.
Yes. But even if it's not regarding pain, it's our brain wants to be as efficient as possible. So it takes in as little information as it needs to make a decision, and it's moving on. And so we have like these schemas and these frameworks and these, point of view that we see everything through. And so we're constantly living through that. And this idea about slowing that down to be able to access our values and wait, is this really how I want to act in this moment, as opposed to my automatics and my entire life experiences that typically inform our automatics. Mm-hmm. It's very counterintuitive, and I would even argue it's countercultural. Although there's a lot of buzz about mindfulness, but really our culture just wants us to be consuming and doing and busyness, and not really engaging in living our lives according to what we know to be true and what we really care about. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just check in with our guests here today and see if they have any questions or comments. If you're interested, you can put something in the chat, and I'd be happy to share it with Barbie. And if you'd rather, feel free to take yourself off mute and pose a question or comment did I just call you Beth? Did I, Barbie?
I wasn't being mindful.
Yeah. So anyhow, okay. Thanks so much for sharing this comment. Well, we're just glad that you're here. And Barbie, I was going to ask you, did you attend a support group for parents who lost a child?
I have 3, so there's a group of 4 of us, women, who I get together with. Back when Jeff died, we were getting together every Tuesday morning at 6:30. And so that's the group of women that I pretty much walked through that season with. And I'm incredibly fortunate in that I do what I do, and I have therapist friends. I had 2 specific friends who would meet with me and talk with me. So I did not meet in a support group, but I had a group of people who were supportive.
Right.
And then I had these 2 other people who I would meet with, and we got into more in-depth discussions about loss and some of the things that I believed, and wondering if he knew that I loved him, and wondering if he loved me, and just all of those kinds of questions that you have, like, that you wonder.
Right. Mm-hmm. How do you recommend your clients who have lost a child to do support group, or is it possible to do this just with, I guess part of the reason I'm asking this is because you were saying oftentimes friends say things with the best of intentions, but it's not how, there's a difference between how it's intended and how it lands, right? And I was thinking that if you were in a support group of people who experienced something similar, there would be at least a level playing field.
I mean, I definitely encourage people to find support.
Okay.
I can't speak to those groups specifically because I haven't participated in one myself, but I can't imagine that they would not be helpful. for some people. I think sometimes, I think it just is all, I do think having participated in Al-Anon over the years, some of those Al-Anon groups were very, very helpful and some of them were not.
Mhm.
So I think it is group specific.
Right.
And I would say if that's not the right group, then find another one. Don't stop because it wasn't the right one.
Yeah, don't isolate because that group didn't work.
Right. But again, in our loss and in our pain, we will personalize.
Mhm.
We'll think, oh, it's me. I'm the one who's weird. It's my fault because I said that. I shouldn't have said that. In my mind, I can think all kinds of things that are self-blaming and critical, and I make it about me when it's really not. Like when I'm in a good place, I can know that. But when I'm not in a good place, I have to fight with everything I'm worth to know that it's not me.
I appreciate your work in progress comment. And I think that comes across as very real to anybody watching this. It's not like, oh, I'm better, I'm done, this is over. That it's going to be an ongoing part of your life. And I also really appreciate that you're saying there's things about you that you like better now because you went through this, that you've learned things about yourself. I was wondering if you could talk about the unexpected things that you learned and how you have moved forward in your life. Has it informed your practice at all?
Completely. Yes. Yes, I apologize to people all the time for all of the clinicians out there who do not know really about grief. Right? Because we sit there with people who hurt and we don't know what we don't know. Like we can read it academically and apply principles, but that is why there is one book that I highly recommend, and and I'll tell it's okay that you're not okay.
And Barbie, I have all your resources. I was going to ask you that, but I'm going to put them right now in the chat so people can look these all up. I have them. I'm going to put them right in the chat now.
It's written by a clinician who had an out of order death. Now her husband died in a drowning accident, but a lot of what she talks about speaks to the complicated grief and out of order loss and the fact that we don't know. And so she really validated for me the idea that it really was okay that I wasn't okay and that I could cry at the drop of a hat. That almost every day, even almost 4 years later, there's intrusive thoughts. And sometimes those thoughts are positive and sometimes they're not. But this is the idea that you learn to carry this stuff with you. The practice that I have engaged in is I plan grief because I can feel it building inside of me. And I have a small basket now, I've whittled it down over the years of Jeff's things. So in the beginning, I would spend an entire day where I would turn my phone off. I would tell a couple of important people I'm not available. And I would go through his things. I would touch, I would hold them, I would cry, I would be mad at him. I would miss him. I would be like, it doesn't make sense. One of the things in my mind is like, it's such a waste. Like it was a waste. Like this did not have to happen. So, but I planned that So I can grieve, I can emote, I can allow the feelings to come out. And then I put his basket and I put the stuff back away and I put it back in the closet. And I do that so my grief doesn't come out sideways.
Yeah, explain that expression. I'm not sure everybody knows that expression.
Well, so like in the beginning, every moment of every day is hard. And it really is a matter of just making it through it and allowing yourself to go through it. The other thing I would say is allowing yourself to not be around people who are not safe for you. In that some people have a need to want to rush your process and rush you through. If that's about them, okay, they can do that. But like, I don't really need to spend time with you because you're not, because it's not helpful for me. It's not really about them. It's about whether it's helpful for me or not. So, and it's not unkind. It's not mean. It's just a thing that happens. So after a while though, like if we don't allow it to come out, it will manifest in some ways that are often not very helpful. Like you'll be sitting at a red light and all of a sudden you'll start to cry. You'll smell something and all of it, it just has a need to manifest. And so if you can plan time to allow it to manifest in a way that's helpful and constructive for you, then it's almost like we put it like we memory stored in our brain, in our limbic system, which is the primal part of our brain. So it's like we visit this pain and we visit this hurt, and then we put it back to bed in our limbic system in a way that's safe, heard, validated, and feels like it was well experienced. Then we get up and wash our face and we function. We do the things that we need to do. We engage in work, we engage with our families, whatever. We have to live life. And so the idea about visiting it, and now like I do it probably about 3 or 4 times a year for a few hours. And I will, go through his stuff and I'll cry and everything like that. And then I put it back away as a means of allowing it to come out in a constructive way, of putting that hurt back to bed in my limbic system and in that primal part of my brain where emotions are stored in a way that doesn't get triggered in a non-constructive way. Does that make sense?
It does. And I think it's kind of a really, really good exercise that sounds like there's a lot of benefit. I wonder though, do you ever do that exercise with other family members who have experienced that loss? Or is it better to do it just for your limbic system?
My personal perspective is it's a very personal thing, and I kind of don't really want to share it with anybody else.
Right.
And
That's okay, right? But if somebody else wants to do that, that would be okay too.
Yeah, but this is going to sound, but it's about me. Like it's about like my process and my journey and what I need to do in that moment, and to share it with somebody else who it's about them too. I don't know. For me, I don't.
And you're giving us permission to do it what's good for us, right?
Yes. If you find that helpful, please do it that way.
Barbie, you've been talking a lot about the mental and emotional symptoms of grief, but you haven't really touched on the physical symptoms of grief, which they're the myriad symptoms. Maybe you could talk about that so people know that if they're experiencing this, they're not alone. It's like, yeah, this is a thing.
You mean like the shortness of breath and the weight on your chest and the
weight loss, weight gain, sleep.
Yeah, and the comfort eating and the comfort drinking, and like Jeff and his alcoholism in those first few months after he died, like all I wanted to do was drink wine. Mm-hmm. But I know what I do for a living, so I only allowed myself to have 2 glasses of wine a night. But guess what? They were large glasses. So, you know, but, and so it was like not okay. But I did not school myself on that. I allowed myself that. But I also knew that I could not stay there.
Right.
And so, yeah, but like the avoidance, the numbing, nothing, everything feels numb, everything feels surreal. You gain weight, you lose interest in things.
Sleep changes.
Oh, yes. I mean, bowel problems, digestive issues. It's And this is the importance of doing the hard emotional work and the intentional work about that, because psychic pain will manifest. It needs to come out. And if we can learn how to visit it safely, then the physical problems that can be complicated by that intense psychic pain, emotional distress pain, the body will recognize that it's been heard, that it's been acknowledged, that it's put to bed in the limbic system in such a way that's been constructed. So that's the importance of not avoiding it and of actually engaging it actively.
Right.
With people that are helpful for you. Can I say that again? Not helpful people are not helpful.
Okay, that's major takeaway. Should I put that in the chat?
Because they're out there. And they mean well. They mean well. They just don't know.
Right.
And it's okay for us to say, you don't feel good for me right now. Now, I still love you and I still can go have coffee with you, but you don't get to be part of my story. Like you don't get to be part of my insight right now.
Right. Barbie, you had shared a couple of resources with me, and I wanted to mention them and give you a chance to talk about them. One is the Grand Family Guidebook, Wisdom Support for Grandparents Raising Grandchildren. And I think that's from the Hazelden Berry Ford organization. But maybe you could talk a little bit about that. We'll go through each resource, and maybe there might be questions that come up out of that.
So I think that there's two websites there, the Hazelden website and then also the Bereavement website.
Oh, okay.
They are a host, or I mean, just like a wealth of information with many links about that you can get more and more information from. One of the things I would say is that it's a bit of a catch-22 in that if your adult addict had children and are now no longer with you, you have something from them. But I do have a couple of clients who are raising their grandchildren.
And that's hard at this stage.
It's very hard at this stage because they're talking about well, I don't they sold their house, their retirement plans changed. They're now back into preschool and showing, dropping kids off and things like that. And people are like, are you the mom? And, it's a lonely place to be because they don't feel like they fit in.
So that resource is particularly for grandparents.
That are raising their grandchildren, but that website has a lot of other resources in there about like addicted families and siblings and that kind of thing. The bereavement website is specific to how substance abuse affects all of us, how it affects siblings, how it affects parents, how it affects children.
Yeah, and that's not something that you really touched on, but Jeff was a brother, he was a son, he was a nephew, a cousin, an uncle, and his death impacted everybody. Everybody that knew Jeff, I think, felt an incredible loss.
Yeah. It was And yet everybody who knew Jeff felt that loss, but they also felt like gifts from him.
Right.
Because not very many people knew just how bad Jeff was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they only got the good parts of him. And so, and there were a lot of really, really good parts.
Right. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The other resource you shared here was the Bereavement Academy. .com. Can you talk a little bit about that and what people?
Yeah, that's the one that has a specific article in there about the impacts. I would encourage you to search the impacts of substance abuse on their website, because that I found very informative and grounding and just validating, just like I'm not alone, that this experience is not unique to me.
Mm-hmm.
And as devastating and as painful as it is, other people are walking it and have walked it. Mm-hmm. So, and so like when I see things like in my own life, I'm like, oh, that's right, because this makes sense. And there's knowing that things make sense is weirdly comforting to me.
Yeah, I don't even think that's weird. Like, of course, it's like, oh God, I'm not alone. I'm normal. Yeah, I worry.
Yeah, but there's a part of me that feels badly that other people have to have this too.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's like, oh, I like that, but wait, that's weird.
Yeah. And the last one you shared was your holistic psychologist.
Yeah, so this lady, I've only found her like in the last year. And she's available on Instagram or YouTube or whatever. But I like 80 to 90% of what she shares, and she's a prolific poster. And she teaches a lot about how to do our internal work, about how to not be a product of our conditioning, how to be intentional and mindful, and then doing like a lot of the self-healing. She teaches explicitly the inner child work, about like a lot of my reactions, or a lot of our reactions, are to things that were conditioned in us as children and in our families of origin, and they were woven into our fabrics of being. So she teaches about how to become aware of them, how to observe them, and how to rewire our neural pathways.
Right.
And yeah, so, and she gives like daily little teachings, which I think are, it's just very encouraging and very like I read her, I'm like, yeah, that's a good word for today.
You might be able to eat a teaspoon of that every day, but you couldn't eat a whole turkey of it, you know? So she's giving it to bits that's easy to take in and make sense of.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Barbie, I just wanted to let you know that Kate said, thank you so much for sharing. Barbie, you are an inspiration. I'm sorry I have to leave, but I look forward to joining again. Thank you, Bernadette. So thanks to Kate for joining us with us. And what we do, our hour is just a little past. So I'm going to close up this session and thank you for being here. But I'm also going to stay on, but we won't record this part because then people can talk to you directly and have that privacy and that sacredness that many people feel they need when they're talking about something that's close to their heart. So Barbie, thank you for being here on Prime Time for Women's Navigating Change, for sharing your story of a mother who knows addiction and also has is working progress towards resiliency and modeling that for all of us. I'm so grateful for you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. Thanks everybody for joining us.